Welcome to the live stream, everyone. Sorry for that technical difficulty. I think Jeff said sound is good so far, so that's great. Sorry about that. I feel bad too because I had a number of people purchase my my intermittent fasting and low carb course, and I was telling them you got to show up to the live stream today at like 11:30, and like this is what happened, and it's hard for me to get them back. Sounds good. Okay, Carol Jean said sounds good. Yes, no echo. I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened. So okay, I wanted to give everyone just maybe a minute or two just to find it, because normally, like, I'll tell you what I use. I use a couple of different softwares. Actually, I'm going live now on multiple platforms. Maybe that was the issue. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, on my 𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂 fitness page and my 𝘾𝙃 page, and then I link that to the time restricted eating on my low carb page. Obviously, I'm on YouTube, so maybe you're just overwhelmed, and I use two different softwares to do that. I use Restream. That's a broadcasting software that lets me broadcast to multiple different platforms. And then I use something called 𝘾𝙊𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂, which is another software which enables me to pull in all these slides. But I think we're good. I think we got 14 people back. That's great. Okay, so Jeff, Carol, Jean, great. Nicholas is back. Jean is back. Sounds good. Excellent. Patel from the UK is back. Cool. Back in business. Okay, Nicholas likes OBS. Yeah, I fooled around with OBS, but that's another platform similar to 𝘾𝙊𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂. I should try it. I'm not that familiar with OBS. No problem. Give me time to get my coffee ready. That's what Jeff says. Okay, great. Cool. Yeah, take your time. And like we talked about, Blue Sky is back in the house again. That's great. I'm glad. So we're gonna give Jeff a second to get his coffee. But what we're gonna talk about today is early time restricted eating. That's why there's that little E on the slide you can see. And we're gonna go over the benefits of early time restricted eating compared to just doing these like fasting strategies at all different times in the day. And like I spoke about before, with the echo on the first when we first went live, a new study came out in August talking about all the benefits of early time restricted eating, and it compared it to just a control group that just restricted calories for 14 weeks. And it was a pretty positive study for early time restricted eating. So we're going to break that whole study down. Then we'll go over some best practices, how I think you should do time restricted eating, whether it is early or late. I think there are definite benefits of doing both. And then at the end, we're going to do a Q&A with some meal ideas. I'll show you how I've been eating over the last few weeks, which I always love to do. And once again, ask your questions. We'd love to hear about how you guys are doing this week. Okay, let's go over what is literally early time restricted eating. Sometimes you see people call it time restricted eating. And just to like this basic review, it just means that you're taking in your calories earlier in the day. So for example, if you're doing a 16-8 fasting strategy where you're fasting for 16 hours, taking in all your calories with that 8-hour eating window, when you're doing early time restricted eating, you're just taking your calories in earlier in the day. So for example, say you're having your first meal at 8 in the morning, you eat for 8 hours, last meal by 4 p.m. That would be considered early time restricted eating. And it's a little debatable. You can have your first meal 7 in the morning, you can have your first meal, I think even 10 o'clock, I would consider that. Going from maybe 10 to 6, I would also consider that early time restricted eating. And it does seem, and I've talked about this before, that there is some good research saying that when you take in protein earlier within the day, it's very good for maintaining muscle mass. So this is probably the best schedule to follow if it fits into your lifestyle. And I've talked about this in the past. It really doesn't work that well for me because I'm not hungry in the morning. It's so easy for me to skip breakfast. I'm busy training clients, and I like just socially, I like to eat dinner at night with my wife when my kids are home later in the day. But we're going to talk about a couple of hacks that I've been doing to get the benefits of both worlds, where I'm still skipping breakfast, yet taking in just a little bit of calories and taking in most of my food within a 6 to 8 hour eating window later in the day. But let's go over this study. This is what everyone's been talking about, this new time restricted eating study. Let me just blow up a picture of it so you know. This is it's a good study. Came out in August of 2022, so it just came out. The name of it, as you can see, Effectiveness of Early Time Restricted Eating for Weight Loss, Fat Loss, Cardiometabolic Health, in adults with obesity. So not only did I look at like who lost more weight, who lost more body fat, but I also looked at things like blood pressure, insulin sensitivity, and things like that. So let's break the whole study down, and I think we're going to learn a lot from it. But there's a key takeaway that I found from the study. Okay, first of all, this is how they did it. They compared an early time-restricted eating group to a 12-hour eating window. Okay, so for example, one group, and there was a decent amount of people, there were 90 obese individuals. This was a 14-week study. And they used the term free living dietary recall, meaning that it wasn't like people were cooking for these individuals. These are people going by their recall of what they've been eating. But they were told, like for example, that both groups, the early time-restricted eating group and the group that can eat within a 12-hour eating window, to reduce their calories by about 500 calories per day. They can eat what they want, but just eat 500 calories per day. So both groups were in a calorie deficit. Right? The people who did the early time-restricted eating, they had their first meal at 7 in the morning, 7 a.m., but then they stopped eating by 3 p.m., whereas the other group was able to eat within a 12-hour eating window. So that was the main difference, and they both were restricting calories about 500 calories per day. Okay, and let's go over the results of the study. And I don't want to bore everyone with study. I'm just going to quickly break it down, then we'll talk about early time-restricted eating in general. This is what happened. First of all, both groups, lost body weight and had those improved health markers like, cholesterol and things like that, triglycerides, things like, your basic health markers, inflammatory markers, insulin, things like that, all improved in both groups. They both restricted calories, they both lost weight. But the early time-restricted eating group actually lost 2.3 kilograms more on average than the group who just was restricting calories with a 12-hour eating window. So obviously, everyone who's really into intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating, like me and all the social media people that are really into it, they love this study. It's like everyone's doing videos on it. A lot of people that I follow said, "Oh my God, early time-restricted eating works better than calorie restriction. It's just unbelievable." But it's not really quite what the study says, but that's true. The group that only gave themselves an 8-hour eating window from 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon did lose a considerably more weight over a 14-week period. Okay, they also had better I didn't spell it right. I was supposed to say systolic blood pressure. It's systolic and diastolic blood pressure. I think it only went down 4 points, but that's still significant for the people who did the early time restricted eating. But everything else, when it comes to the other health markers, were pretty much the same. Like this particular study didn't show that time restricted eating improved insulin sensitivity any better than just restricting calories. Everything did improve in both groups, but the biggest difference in this particular study was that the participants lost more weight and they had a little bit better improvements in systolic blood pressure. And they also, this was a little confusing. Initially, the study said that they didn't really lose a greater percentage of body fat, the early time restricted eating. But then when the researchers looked into the study deeper and really analyzed what everyone was eating, they actually did lose a little bit more body fat, the early time restricted eating group. But this is what the researchers determined when they went a little more in depth into examining exactly the people's recall of what they were eating. And I think this is the biggest takeaway, which we'll talk about in the next slide. The people who did the early time restricted eating, even though they were told to reduce calories by 500 calories a day, they reduced them by an additional 200. And I think that is the key to this thing, which just shows that one of the biggest benefits of intermittent fasting and time restricted eating, of just giving yourself a smaller eating window, is that you eat less without counting calories and without trying. So that's really interesting, and that's why they contributed the early time restricted eating group to losing so much more weight, is because they just ate less than the other group. Okay, let's look at some questions here. Juicy, I've been absolutely loving green tea. How great. I love green tea too. Jean, I heard Volta Longo say that we shouldn't skip breakfast. I know Volta Longo, and it's interesting because I did a couple of videos that actually did really well talking about gallbladder and skipping breakfast. And I know because I heard Walter Longo talk about it in a podcast and also talk about it just in general, because he's interviewed so much. I forget whose YouTube channel. Maybe it may have been Rhonda Patrick's YouTube channel. He believes that, and I've heard him say this, that when you skip breakfast consistently and say you're doing like a late time restricted eating, he feels like it can lead to maybe lead to gallstones, like sludge in your gallbladder. See, that's what it may be one of the reasons why early time restricted eating really does work so well. And I have a slide on this, but it just has to do with, your circadian rhythm. Like I talked about before, your circadian rhythm is your 24-hour internal clock, and it regulates so many different processes and enzymes and genes that kick in. And I think he's a PhD, Walter Longo, believes in this whole circadian rhythm when it comes to fasting. So by eating like something in the morning, even if it's 10 o'clock, which is like late morning, you kind of like jumpstart your circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is also regulated by light, like, when light hits your eyes, hits your body, when you go to sleep, when you wake up, but it's also regulated when you eat. So I understand that, Gene. I think it's, truthfully, it probably would be better if you can take in your calories earlier in the day. I don't know about the gallbladder thing. I didn't really give my opinion when I did those videos. I just kind of looked at the research and stated what people were saying. I've heard like Dr. Jason Fung say, no, it's not going to affect your gallbladder. I think the research is a little bit mixed on that. And then again, too, like for example, I'm drinking black coffee, even though I've been fasting all morning. There is caffeine in black coffee, even though there's like almost no calories. And caffeine is processed by the liver and kind of jumpstarts, your digestive process to some degree. So I also think that if you're taking in, liquids, even Pellegrino mineral water, and maybe you're squeezing some lemon in your water, or drinking some black coffee or green tea, something with caffeine, it does kind of get that circadian rhythm going to some degree too, even if you're not eating. But if I had to give someone like the ideal thing to do, I probably would say early intermittent fasting or early time restricted eating is probably the best way to go. Even though I think there's tremendous benefit in doing it both ways, for sure. And once again, I talk about this all the time. The difference between time restricted eating and intermittent fasting is time restricted eating, you do it every single day, whereas intermittent fasting, you do it intermittently. So if you're doing 16-8 every day, time restricted eating. If you do it once, twice, 3 times a week intermittently, that would be intermittent fasting. Okay, so let's go over like the results, right? So the main results are the people who did the early time restricted eating lost more weight, considerably more weight in 14 weeks, lost a little bit more body fat, had improvements in systolic blood pressure, and all the other health markers improved in both groups equally. Okay, and in my opinion, the big takeaway is that I think this is still probably the biggest benefit of intermittent fasting and time restricted eating, or just fasting in general, is that you eat less calories without counting calories and without trying. It's just an automatic response to giving yourself a smaller eating window, or just, like you fast for 24 hours once a week, you reduce your calories for the week, right? Even because you didn't eat for one day. Okay. And then another big takeaway, which people still debate, like intermittent fasting doesn't work, time restricted eating doesn't work. It also, there's another study that just proves that it works just as well as restricting calories. And in my opinion, I think it works even better because it's just easier to follow, and it's just such an easy way to reduce calories. And let's go a little bit more in depth now, talking about early time restricted eating versus late. I did a live stream maybe a year ago where I looked at like 5 or 6 different studies, and there was like somewhat mixed results. Some studies will say there's no difference. You can get just as much benefit either giving an 8-hour, 6-hour eating window in the morning or in the evening. Other studies show no, early time restricted eating is better, like similar to the study we have now, right? There are other studies, and this is a big one, that really does show that taking in protein earlier within the day is pretty important for maintaining and putting on muscle mass. So if one of your biggest concerns is not losing muscle and maintaining muscle, if you can take in some protein earlier in the day, even 10 o'clock or so, it will probably be a better idea. So probably the ideal say time restricted eating strategy would be like do like a 6 to 8 hour eating window from say 10 o'clock to what, maybe 6 in the afternoon, like something like that. I think that would be ideal. And I kind of made some adjustments to that too. Like I typically would do like break my fast 12, 1, 2 o'clock. I'm trying to break it a little bit earlier. I'm trying to eat dinner a little bit earlier. And I've also been doing a little bit of these, if you notice here, I have down a AM protein hacks where, and I've talked about this in the past too, I may take some essential amino acid powder, like, in the morning, so I'm getting some aminos and proteins without necessarily taking in much calories. Or sometimes I may even just have, and I think I talked about this last week, I may have just 2 hard-boiled eggs at like 10 o'clock. And even though, yes, there's a couple 150 calories in 2 hard-boiled eggs, it's fat and protein. It's going to minimize the spike in insulin. Some people would define breaking a fast as just a big spike in insulin. So if you're eating an egg, which is fat and protein, you're going to get a small spike in insulin, plus you're getting some protein in your system. So you can kind of maybe get the best of both worlds, where you're getting a little bit of that early time restricted eating, but then you're giving yourself, say, a 6-hour eating window later in the day. I kind of like that, and that's kind of what I'm going to be doing, I think. Okay, Matt. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for showing up. Hey, Mike. New subscriber. Cool. First started noticing you on your short ideal meal videos. Cool, great. Noticed I've not seen black beans much in those meals. Just wondering your position on that. I think beans are fine. I mean, it's definitely a high fiber, decent amount of protein. For me, it's a little bit on the carby side. The only time I generally eat beans, and I do love them, is when I make I've done some videos on it, you may have seen them. I do my bison, my homemade buffalo chili. But this recipe normally calls for like 2 cans of beans. I put like a half a can of beans. I love beans. I mean, they're very satisfying. They do fill you up. For me, to be eating beans regularly, to me, it's a little on the carby side for me, but I think they're fine. Especially if you're vegetarian or vegan, I think it's wonderful. You have to get your complete protein when you're mixing beans with other sources of protein to make them complete. So I think beans are fine. I think it's great. Okay, Nicholas. Mike, do you know why this happened? I woke up, ate breakfast, and my face stopped being puffy. Not sure, Nicholas. Kind of hard to say. I would look like your overall plan of like what you're eating. Maybe the days when your face is puffy, maybe you had a little more sodium than you typically would. You could even be dehydrated and get puffy because you're holding water. Kind of hard to say. But I wouldn't be over concerned about anything like that. Don't. Just stay healthy, do your workout, eat well, and don't be overly concerned if your face looks a little puffy from time to time. Mike, is bread the worst carb? I wouldn't say anything is the worst carb. It really depends. Maybe you would say because it's a higher glycemic. Now, glycemic index just measures like how much it's gonna how quickly it's digested and like spikes blood sugar. So maybe if I would pick like the worst carb, I would probably still go with fructose. Because fructose is like processed in the liver. The body can only process so much fructose at any one time. So if you eat too much fructose, you wind up with like metabolic syndrome, high triglycerides. And I don't mean like necessarily fruit, because fruit has fiber and vitamins and things, good stuff in it. I mean like high fructose corn syrup, like things like that. That's the stuff I would say is the worst type of carb, like a processed carb, especially if you're mixing a processed carb with like those over-oxidized, overheated vegetable oils. Like a donut is like the worst thing you can eat. Like you fry dough in a donut and then you put sugar on it like Lay's. That's probably the worst type of carb. But it's a fat and a carb combination. And the worst carbs seem to be also mixed, right, with the worst types of fat. Not like an olive oil, right? They're frying donuts in like a corn oil or some type of like seed oil that's probably like been burnt so many times that it's oxidized to death, and it's just horrible stuff, right? Okay, Carol Jean. Intermittent fasting is so simple for me. I got to where I was sick of eggs early in the morning before starting my lifestyle. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I definitely, I'm not really hungry in the morning. And intermittent fasting, I think it does work so well for me. It's the easiest way for me to definitely keep my calories under control. And I have found just from working with thousands of people over the years, I've said this before, out of all the different diet plans and diet strategies, I find this intermittent fasting and time restricted eating to be the most compliant and the easiest way for people to reduce calories and lose weight. Like I like to say, you tell someone only eat 2 meals a day with one like snack, one protein snack, and pick an 8-hour eating window. Within an 8-hour eating window, whether it's early or late, most people are going to do incredibly well. Most people are going to start losing weight, eat less calories, and do so well. And it's so simple. And you can even use it for any diet. I lean more towards that low-carb, whole natural food diet, but you can do it with a higher carb diet. Like if you're into beans and rice and things like that, you can do it with a diet like that. You know, it really works with almost any type of eating or diet strategy. Let's see, Jeff. My peppermint matcha coffee has a few more calories than black, but it's so tasty. I agree. Hey, you got to enjoy yourself. I don't think there's going to be many calories in that. Even if you're drinking coffee with a little sugar and cream, a little bit. I mean, you know, some people say if you're taking in less than 50 calories, you're still in a fasted state. You know, I'm pretty flexible. As long as you're in a calorie restricted state, you're going to lose some weight, right? Let's see. G-Girl. Hey, G-Girl. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. The game changer for me was not so much when I did time restricted eating, but shortened my eating window to 24. I finally lost the last 10 pounds. My hormones and gut health improved as well. Oh, fantastic, G-Girl. That's great. I like your photo, too. You look great. And if people don't know what 24 is, meaning that G-Girl has been fasting for 20 hours and then taking in all her calories within a 4-hour eating window. The only thing I would say to her is that just make sure you're taking in an adequate amount of protein within that 4-hour eating window. That's the only negative side when you start going with those smaller eating windows. Like when you start doing OMAD to give yourself a 1-hour eating window, even a 4-hour eating window, I would just make sure you're taking an adequate amount of protein. And my general rule is 0.9 grams times lean body weight. So for example, if you're 150 pounds and you're 20% body fat, that gives you 120 pounds of lean mass, times that by 0.9, that brings you at 108 grams of protein. Every 4 ounces of chicken, fish, meat, you know, is about 25 grams of protein. An egg is 6 or 7. A Greek yogurt is about 15. And if you're not sure what your body fat is, you can even just multiply your weight by 0.7. And I think that's also another great way to determine you're getting enough protein. And try to split it up within that 4-hour eating window. Like spread it out. Like as soon as the 4-hour eating window starts, take some protein, and then maybe some in the middle, some at the end. You know, so it's just so important. I think the two most important things to track by far are calories and protein. You know, a good calorie deficit, I always say, is 10, 11 times your body weight, right? And then you want to make sure you're taking an adequate amount of protein for multiple reasons. Protein is the building blocks of the body, right? There's a high thermic effect when you eat protein. You burn 25-30% of the calories just digesting and processing the protein. Protein is satisfying. You eat protein, you're not hungry for a long period of time. It's so important to take in a good, adequate amount of protein. Hey, Gene, thanks for the super chat once again. I really appreciate it. Gene gives me a super chat every single Sunday, which I really appreciate. Let's see. I was great at my diet all week, but I went to a kid's birthday party yesterday afternoon, and I just could not resist. Still weighed in at 245 year to date. That's still good, but that's down. I mean, since you first started, and Gene's on a very low calorie diet. He's doing really well. I think he's around like 1,000, 1,200 calories a day. He's making sure he's taking in an adequate amount of protein. There's a whole bunch of whey protein shakes, and then he eats some fibrous vegetables and things like that. And also has a nice meal at the end of the day. So he's doing great. You know, everyone has a bad day. I had a bad night last night. Not a bad, I had a great time. It was one of my best friends' surprise birthday parties. All my friends are turning 60. And we went to this party last night, so I pretty much, I do what I typically would do on a day like this, on a day like that. I pretty much fasted almost the entire day because I knew I would be overeating, you know, that night. And I haven't been drinking any alcohol the last couple of weeks, so had some drinks last night. You know, I had a lot of bread. It was an Italian restaurant. I ate a lot of pasta, and I feel like my veins are ready. I feel like I'm, you know, it volumized my muscle, so I filled up my muscle with glycogen last night for sure. So that's hopefully all you did, Gene. Maybe with that birthday cake, you filled up your muscle with a little bit of glycogen, and you'll just deplete it, and you'll be down like in a couple of days. And most of it's water weight, right? So okay, so let's go over early time restricted eating versus like I said, it's probably better to eat earlier if you can, right? If you can fit into your lifestyle. Taking in protein earlier in the day, research shown, is a good thing for maintaining and putting on muscle mass. But you know, lifestyle is still the most important thing. So if you can't take in calories earlier in the day, don't think there's no benefit to doing these strategies later in the day, I think it's pretty much almost as good. It's still great. But then you can also try some hacks and things like I do. Maybe do an essential amino acid powder, maybe taking just a little bit of protein and fat earlier in the day without spiking insulin too much. And then do your normal, like later in the day, time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. And then I think we talked about this slide, the circadian rhythm. This is one of the reasons why I think the early time restricted eating, works so well, is that internal. There's a Dr. Panda, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He wrote the book, The Circadian Code. Great book. Really, really recommend it. Plus, all the guys I always talk about, like Andrew Huberman, the professor from Stanford, he has that podcast, Huberman Labs. They're all leaning more towards this circadian rhythm and how incredibly important it is. Like Andrew Huberman, every time he's on his podcast, he's always talking about how getting outside first thing in the morning, without sunglasses on, even drinking your coffee outside just for 10, 15 minutes, having that sunlight hit your body, hit your eyes, kind of just jump starts the circadian rhythm. Same thing with food. Dr. Panda doesn't want people eating as soon as they wake up. You wait an hour, but he does like the idea of taking in some food earlier in the day. So probably due to your circadian rhythm and due to the new research on taking in protein earlier in the day, it's probably a good idea if you can take in some calories around 10 o'clock or so, if you can. But still, like I keep on saying, the biggest thing is just pick an intermittent fasting, a time restricted eating schedule that you can sustain and do that fits into your lifestyle. And for me, it is more later in the day, even though I might be taking in some of these protein hacks maybe around 10 o'clock. That's kind of what I've been doing lately. And I think it's good. But I thought this was a good study. I didn't want to go too in depth with it with the studies. I lose people. I see the view counts drops when I talk about the studies too intensely. But it was a good study. It was a 14-week study, 90 people. Just a little bit more research, saying that intermittent fasting and time restricted eating really does work. And so let's go over some different meals. I would like to talk about that. Okay, Mike. This is Nicholas. Mike. It's really frustrating because I have double chin. It's nowhere near as bad as December last year, but it's still there. You know what, Nicholas? I know you're a really nice young man and you've done so well. You lost so much weight. I wouldn't be over concerned. I'm sure you look incredible. You're a young guy. You're like 17 years old. I'm sure you look amazing. You're at a really good weight now, a nice optimal weight. I know you want to lose a couple of more pounds here or there, but I'm sure you look fantastic. I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. And sometimes when you lose, I know you lost a lot of weight. It can take a little time for everything to tighten up. So I'm sure you look amazing. I wouldn't, be concerned about a little bit of a double chin at your age, Let's see what Jean's got to say. I'm thinking I will hold the diet for another 2 weeks, then maybe take 1 week off because this stuff is hard at times. No, I totally agree. And also, Gina, I know you like to go, because it's worked for you in the past, these very low-calorie diets. I don't necessarily think you really have to do that. I mean, if you want to do it maybe once or twice a week where you're really going very low, but I think you can really do just as well doing like a 16-8 or an 18-6, like 2 mat and a protein shake or 2, and, you can easily go, I know you're 245. You can easily go 2,000 calories a day and be in like a nice calorie deficit and just be a little bit more relaxed. Maybe it'll take you a little bit longer to lose the weight, but I think you can easily go 2,000 calories. I don't think you have to torture yourself with that very low calorie diet. I know you like that and it's worked for you, but if you're struggling a little bit, I don't think you have to. You really don't. I think you can definitely up your calories for sure and still do really, really well. 17 in 3 days out. Thanks, Nicholas. That's great. Happy birthday. Carol Jean. I had to juggle a pie contest yesterday. Had to take a bite of each. One woke up this morning with a lot of inflammation. I hate it, yeah. I kind of have a headache too. Yeah, I know. I guess especially if you're tasting all different types of pies too. And they're kind of sugary. But I'm sure it was a lot of fun. I don't feel great this morning either, I have to say, from eating all that food last night. I think I feel puffy. I feel like my rings are tight. I think I ate so much more salt. It just, it's just how it is. But this, let's go over some examples. You guys know how I eat, but this is, I maybe even showed this last week. I've been doing this a lot lately. I'm back into my eating a lot of fermented foods. I've been eating like sauerkraut or those natural Bubby's pickles, like real fermented pickles, not like vinegar pickles. The fermented food. This is sauerkraut here. Feeds the good bacteria in your stomach, good for the gut brain, the connection, which is really great for you. Then, like I'm talking about, I always prioritize protein. This is how I broke my fast, I think, a week or so ago one day. It's hard to tell. This is a tremendous one of those big Italian plates. This is at least 4 ounces of smoked salmon, which is going to be, 25, 30 grams of protein, maybe even more. This is a can of sardines. And, like I love sardines. I eat sardines almost every day. I like them so much because they're high in those omega-3 fatty acids. The omega-3s are the fatty acids that you have to get through your diet for good health. It's good for reducing inflammation, good for brain health. I mean, omega-3s is so important to get them in your diet. That's why I lean more towards like pescatarian type eating. Most of my animal protein is actually fish. I eat some red meat from time to time. You're going to see I may have some meals pulled up here, but I love getting my omega-3s with my protein source. And the good thing about sardines too is that you're eating like the whole fish in a way, so you're getting the bones, you're getting the calcium, right? You're getting the connective tissue, you're eating the skin. It's so good for you. Let's see what Jeff's got here. Jeff, I ate popcorn and Oreos last night. Oh my goodness. And surprisingly, I lost a half a pound from yesterday and feel fine. Must be all the exercise I do. Yeah, I know it's back at fitness season for you. And sometimes, hey, who knows? Your muscles probably just sucked up those carbohydrates, and who knows? It worked for you. Maybe you even get a little bit of a metabolism boost too from eating like that. What are your supplements I'm taking? Okay, Nicholas wants to know what I'm taking. I'm not taking too many things right now. I always do a protein powder, and I switch between all different types. I like that Garden for Life brand. That's lately what I've been taking. I do a whey protein isolate theirs. Love it. It comes from the dairy there. It's grass-fed, grass-finished. Comes from Ireland. I think that's the best when it says real dairy with that real dairy. I don't know. Sometimes I have it here. It's a green logo that says real dairy, and it's a green square with a little cow in the middle of it. That means that dairy comes from Ireland. It's probably the best place around the world where you can get cows that can really graze outside all year round. I love that. And then they also make a plant-based one that has a high, really good amino acid profile. I mean, they take pea protein, and they also take some bean protein. It's interesting, back to the bean question. And it gives it a high amount of like leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So it's high in those branched-chain amino acids. So for a vegetable protein, it has a good amino acid profile, very similar to the whey. And that's why I like whey protein, because it's high in those branched-chain aminos, which is good for muscle building and maintaining muscle mass. And I like this particular plant-based one because it's really high in those branched-chain. I used to just do hemp or by itself, but the amino acid profile is okay with hemp seed or even pea, but not as good when you're combining these vegetable proteins. Plus, that particular protein brand is 2 big scoops, so it's kind of filling and I find really satisfying. I always do a men's multivitamin. Sometimes I do a whole food vitamin like a new chapter, men over 50, or I'll do a live, which is men over 50, which is a combination of synthetic and whole natural food vitamins. I also take some fish oil, even though I'm eating a lot of fish. I've been taking Nordic Naturals. I try to take about 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams, or a little more of EPA. That's what I want. It seems like all the research is leading towards 1 to 2 grams per day. Good for mood, puts you in a good mood. It actually helps the body absorb serotonin. It's interesting having those omega-3s. That's why omega-3s are really good for depression and just mood disorders and things like that. I just listened to a great podcast, Andrew Huberman, on how to minimize depression and how to put yourself in a better mood. And that's one of the things he was talking about, taking omega-3s 1 to 2 grams a day. Also creatine. He was talking about how creatine is good for mood. I'm not taking creatine right now, but I have taken creatine in the past, Nicholas. It definitely helps muscle mass and strength and all that, no question. Let me see what else I'm taking. Right now, I think that's about it. I was taking a lot of collagen protein powder, but I cycled out of that. Now I'm doing, like I said, the whey protein isolate and the plant protein. I don't think I'm really taking much else right now, but I've taken so many different supplements. If you follow me on Amazon, go to like Amazon 𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂, my shopping page. You'll see all the supplements that I have taken. I review a bunch of supplements on the Amazon storefront page, which is kind of fun. Sometimes I take a little like turmeric and things like that. I mean, it depends, anti-inflammatory type things. Okay, let's see what else we got. My rings were so tight. Yeah, I know. That's what happens. You hold a little bit of water from eating like a more salty or processed food. That's exactly what happens to me. Let's see. Nicholas, I take vitamin A, B12, vitamin C, D, copper, magnesium. It sounds good. And omega-3 test. Sounds good. I like all those. Okay. Nicholas, what is the best way to eliminate puffiness? I would just lose water weight, but I wouldn't worry about that, Nicholas. I wouldn't be too over concerned about the puffiness. Is sardines packed in olive oil okay, even if the olive oil isn't great quality? Well, see, I do. The ones that I buy, I think is the best, and my favorite is the Henry's and Lisa's brand. I've done some like quick, like short videos on it showing the exact brand. You know what? Let me see. I think I may have. Do I have a picture right here? No. Let me see if I do. I must have just got rid of it. And they claim that they put their sardines in extra virgin, organic extra virgin olive oil. So I think it is a pretty good source. I would be a little careful though, 𝘾𝙊𝙰𝙄, just to make sure, like you're saying, is the olive oil source, is it good? You know, if it says organic, I bet it is. I bet it is pretty good. But I would be concerned about that too. Plus, I like a PBA-free can and Henry's and Lisa's. I was buying Wild Planet for a while. I think theirs is pretty good too. But I like the Henry Lisa's the best. They give you nice size sardines too. And as you can see too, I also eat an avocado every single day. Avocados, in my opinion, is a superfood, right? High in fiber, high in potassium, high in those monounsaturated fats. And then I seem to have a handful or two of some type of berries every single day, you know, loaded with antioxidants. Plus, it makes a meal like this so much more fun to eat when you have some raspberries and some blackberries. And lately, they've been on sale, you know, which is really good, which I really like. Hey, Gwen. Hey, Gwen. Thanks for showing up. Okay, so Gwen says, if I don't eat after 4 p.m., do I just drink water if I'm hungry? If I'm hungry, yes. If you could, I mean, I think you can go a little beyond water. You know, I got a cough. I'm going to shut this off for 1 second. You know, I think you can go a little more than water. I think you can definitely go like herbal teas. I love hibiscus tea. You can drink decaf coffee at night. You can drink, you know, I don't want you to have caffeine to keep you up at night, but you can take in any like low to next to no calorie type liquids. Like people like to put apple cider vinegar, right, which will help control clear blood sugar. You can drink a lemon, put some lemon or lime, you know, in water in the evening. You can take a slice of cucumber slice, throw it in there. You just don't want to take in like a decent amount of calories after 4 o'clock, but do whatever you can to stop you from eating. But if you can stop eating at 4 o'clock, I absolutely love it. If you can do like a 10 to 4 eating window, I mean, that is just like ideal. That's a home run if you can. Nicholas, I keep touching the same point on my chest because it feels so strong. Haha. Used to be fat before. It sounds good. So you're muscling up, Nicholas. That's great. Green tea is a hack. So yeah, green tea. Nicholas likes green tea. Crown Prince is pretty tasty. I'm eating 2 cans right now. That's why I asked. Yeah, you know, I don't think I've ever tried Crown Prince. Am I saying that right? I don't know if I've ever tried that brand. I would just look to make sure the can says PBA. That's one of the things I like to like minimize. PBA, and maybe you can find out. You can even maybe go on the website and see the quality of the olive oils they're using. Does it say extra virgin? Sometimes it just says olive oil. That's why I like the Henry and Lisa's. It's organic extra virgin olive oil, so I'm assuming it's a good quality. You know, okay, let me show you some. I've also been eating like a lot of salads. I think all the next pictures are all my different salads. I'm a big believer, as you know, in eating like at least 100 grams of arugula. I eat that every single day, and I do that for a couple of reasons. One, first of all, it's just a healthy microgreen. It's fun to eat. I love the bitterness taste of it. But the main reason why I take 100 grams of arugula is because arugula is probably one of the highest sources of nitrates, like naturally, like the healthy nitrates. And nitrates convert to nitric oxide within the body. And you want about, it's interesting, you want about 400 milligrams of nitrates to create the response of increased exercise performance, better blood flow, things like that. And like other foods are not as like standardized. Like arugula just is one of the highest sources. Like red spinach extract's another one, beets is another one. But it seems like arugula is almost the highest, and it's so low in calories. So 100 grams of arugula is about 480 milligrams of nitrate. So you're really getting a response. I think it's one of the healthiest things for people to eat on a regular basis is arugula. Let's see, Gwen. Peanut butter and jelly is fine with my chest getting small if I can make my belly smaller. I mean, yeah, you know, calories is, like I said, you can pretty much, I think, I mean, okay, my favorite diet still is a diet that doesn't spike blood sugar constantly and keeps insulin on the relatively lower side. But like I said before, the two most important things to track when it comes to losing weight, no doubt about it, calories, super important. Calories number one, and then just taking an adequate amount of protein. So if you want to have a peanut butter and jelly and you find it satisfying, you're getting some carbs there, you're getting some, you're getting a little bit of fat and protein in the peanut butter or jelly. If you find it enjoyable and you're keeping your calories in line, I think it's totally fine, as long as you are taking in an adequate amount of protein overall. You can probably pretty much eat any way you want. And I always talk about this story. I've done every diet you can imagine. In my 20s and 30s, I eat a high carb, low fat, moderate to high protein diet. I look great. My blood work was reasonable, was pretty good. But I was hungry all the time because I was constantly spiking my insulin. Then when I got older, like in my 40s, mid 40s, I switched over to more of this low carb, intermittent fasting type approach. And my blood work is better. My triglycerides are lower. My inflammatory markers are a little bit lower too. It's so much easier for me to control calories because I'm not hungry. When I eat more of a low-carb, whole natural food diet, I'm just not hungry because I'm not constantly spiking blood sugar. But I always kept my protein. That was the constant. I always kept my protein moderate to high. And I would control my weight with how many calories by either, reducing or increasing carbohydrates. So I think you can do peanut butter and jellies as long as you're keeping your calories under control, and you are making sure you're taking in other sources of protein. I was taking in two peanut butter and jellies. He talked about his chest. Is that what you mean? Oh no, peanut butter. Truthfully, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm not good at these abbreviations. It's JPB. I'm not even sure what you mean by that. Okay. Let's see. No PBA. The choice here to town is nil. Okay, no PBA, but the choices here in town are nil. I know. I mean, maybe Amazon, maybe order it online. You can get the Henry and Lisa's online. I even have a link in my Amazon page. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for showing up. Hey, Mike. When I eat grains, I feel bloated and gain weight. Yeah, all it probably means is that when you eat carbohydrates, whatever you're not burning right then, gets stored away in your muscles and your liver in the form of glycogen, like the excess calories. When you store those excess calories in your muscles and your liver in the form of glycogen, your body holds more water. It's like a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio. For every gram of carbs you hold and store in your muscles, you're going to hold 2, 3, 4 grams of water, depending upon your body. So that's why you can literally just have a whole bunch of grains one night. Like say you ate a bowl of pasta, or you had a whole bunch of bread or something, a bunch of rice, and you can wake up the next day and you feel bloated and you could be 4 or 5 pounds heavier. But it's mostly all water weight. Like I said, you run into trouble when you do things like that consistently every single day. Like if your muscles and your liver are full to the brim with stored carbohydrates, with glycogen, and then you keep on eating more and more and more, that's when all the problems start. That's when you start gaining weight. That's when the carbs are converted to body fat. That's when your triglycerides come up. That's what leads to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes and all these different things. Once your muscle and liver are full, you got to really minimize the amount of calories, the amount of carbohydrates you're eating. So the ideal formula is you use these intermittent fasting strategies, restrict calories. You always want to deplete your glycogen stores in your muscle and liver, and then let them maybe fill up again, or maybe halfway fill up. You just don't want them full to the brim. And then you keep eating. That's when all the problems start. So this is like I said, this is my arugula, which I love. And I always go with a good quality protein source. I love making this grilled chicken. This is just grilled chicken. And I cook it 𝘾𝙊𝙼𝙃 with extra virgin olive oil. I season it with that Red Mond's, that real mineral salt, which I love. I love that Red Mond salt. It's a healthy salt. It comes from Utah. I love it. Then I put a little garlic pepper, a little onion pepper. Then I put a little just ground pepper on top. It's not onion. I meant to say onion powder, garlic powder. And then I always take an avocado. You may not be able to see it, but there's an avocado in here, and I got some organic blueberries. And then I always put balsamic vinegar on it, similar to apple cider vinegar. All vinegars in general are high in acetic acid, which helps control blood sugar post-meal. Some people feel it slows digestion. It's a good thing to do. So, and people think you have to have apple cider vinegar for that. It could be anything. It could be balsamic vinegar, any vinegar. So I always put some balsamic vinegar on the salad just to minimize the blood sugar spike, post meal, which is great. Let's see what we got. Here, when it comes, we got that one. A polar bear beer. That's what I mean, juicy polar bear beer. Funny. Okay. Plus arugula is just to say arugula. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, maybe I'm even pronouncing it wrong. So I'll show you some of my other salads. I've been pretty much sticking to the same theme with the salad. I just keep on changing my protein source and mix it up a little bit. 'Cause I always want to get, with me, I like to take in at least 50 grams of protein, per meal, maybe even a little bit more. I know that's somewhat debatable, right? How much protein you can utilize per meal. I think you can utilize more, even more than 50, 60, 70. I think you can even go that high, especially if you're a bigger guy. If you're a petite gal, maybe not. I try to go 50, 60. So, for example, here I got the can of sardines, but that only gives me 20, 25 grams of protein. So I threw a couple of hard-boiled eggs in there too. So I want to get up to like 50. So I try to do 50, 60 if I'm doing it too mad, and then taking a protein shake with like 30 grams of protein, if not more, to get me up to close to 150 grams of protein a day. I try to take in about 150, 135 grams of protein per day. So this is another typical salad. Same thing. Got my blueberries, got my eggs, avocado. This may even have been a combination. Sometimes I do this too, a combination of arugula with spinach. It may have been a mix. Spinach is also really high in nitrates too. And I think I got another one that's kind of similar to this. Let's close this one down. Right, this is kind of cool. I do this too sometimes, just to make the salads more filling and more satisfying. Like this was actually left over. I think this is an Arctic chart from the night before. Once again, a real high omega-3 fish, nice size. My arugula salad, and you can say even sometimes I like to throw some nuts in. I threw a handful of raw cashews in there. I love grapes, even though grapes is a kind of like a higher fructose-ish type fruit, but I just throw a few in. It makes this salad so much more fun to eat. And some blueberries. This is just ideal eating. This is, if you eat like this, if you like break your fast every day with a meal like this, and then for dinner, do something more in the line of like another nice piece of, animal type protein with 2 different colored vegetables, maybe like a string bean, like a red beet, or like a yellow squash. You want to eat a rainbow colored vegetables, different vitamins, different minerals, different nutrients. You can't go wrong. I mean, you're gonna be at an optimal weight before you know it. This is how you should eat, for sure. Let me see. I think those are all the different meals I got. I guess I got a little phone off. I had some other things, but I got phone off with the sound check. Let's see what Jeff says. Okay, I like to eat a big salad on my non-tennis day because it does send me to the bathroom. Yeah, I know the salad. It's funny. I probably, my system's so used to it. I probably eat 35, 40 grams of fiber a day just from, the arugula and avocado has 17, 18 grams. And I talked about this with G in the past too. I also eat those. If I don't do a protein shake, I'll do one of those no-cal protein bars, which has like 17 grams of fiber. Or I'll do like a Quest protein bar, which has also about 15 to 17 grams of fiber. Like, for example, this is a good fun thing to talk about. Next week, Monday, I'm leaving and I'm going to Albany. And I'm going to be going to this like video conference with all these YouTubers, all these different video people. It's like doing like a 2 or 3 day presentation. And I find though in general at these things, the food is just horrible. Even though it's a reasonable hotel we're staying at too. But I know the food's going to be horrible. So what I'm going to do for the trip, first of all, I'm going to take a whole bunch of those protein bars. I'll take some Quest and no-cal. I'll have both. I'm going to take a tub of protein powder too. So what I'll probably do in the morning is coffee up. Maybe I'll just, I don't want my concentration to be good. So maybe I'll eat like a protein bar, or have a protein shake around 10 o'clock. I'll skip breakfast. And why I like those 2 protein bars is because the net carbs are extremely low. So even though they may have 25 grams of carbohydrates in them, they're so high in fiber. And they give you a little bit of sugar alcohol, which is for flavoring, but you don't really count that. The net carbs are only maybe 4 or 5 grams per bar, which I love, and I get 25 grams of protein. So I'll probably do that. They generally, even when the food is bad, all these things, they generally give you like some type of a salad. They have it, I'll probably have like a salad for lunch and hopefully have a good protein source in there. And then dinner, I'll try to do the best I can. I'm sure we'll be eating out. This hotel has a nice gym. I looked it up, which is kind of nice too. But I'll probably do a lot of walking. I also find too, when I go on vacation or when I do things like this, in the past, it would be an opportunity for me to hurt myself, meaning that I'm working out in a gym that I'm not accustomed to. So I have found that I just know myself, and maybe you should know yourself too. It's interesting to me how so many of my clients and just talking to people over the years hurt themselves when they go on vacation, like doing an exercise like routine or program that they just like never did before. They decided for some reason they're on vacation, they're going to do something bizarre. Like they're going to decide, today's the day I'm going to start my running program. I'm on vacation and I'm going to go run 5 miles. And then they pull a hamstring, they injure their Achilles tendon, they get plantar fasciitis from just one 5-mile run. Instead of progressing to it, same thing. They have a little time on their hands. They're going to go to the hotel gym. They're going to hit the gym hard, and they hurt themselves. I've done this in my life, so now I do the exact opposite. Whenever I do these conventions, even generally like I took my beach trip in the summer, I like to use that as an opportunity to take a nice walk. Check out the area, meet the local people, walk to a coffee shop, walk back. I like to do things like that. Or maybe even if there's a treadmill at the gym, I'll just walk on the treadmill. Or if there's some dumbbells, maybe I'll do some light training, but I'm not going to hurt myself. I had so many people come back, I have found, from trips like injured. Right? So that's kind of an interesting thing. So that should be fun. So I'll try to keep my calories under control over the next 2 days. So I'll be there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, which should be a lot of fun. All right, I guess this is somewhat of one of my quicker live streams. I guess I didn't prepare these slides till this morning because I had that party last night. But let's see, let's just do a general Q&A. Any questions on fitness? Any questions on your diet plan, fasting strategy? Any struggles you're having when it comes to any of these topics? I love to help you out with it. I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes because I know there's maybe like a minute or like a 2-minute delay to this. And I know New York now, the weather is really cooling off. I don't know how the weather is where all you guys and gals are, but you can tell the summer's ending, which I just hate. And I just love the summer. I love the warm weather. Let's see what Jeff's got. Okay. Yeah, give me a minute to write my questions. Okay, sounds good, Jeff. Take your time. I don't know, I got plenty of time. I want to go like at least another 10, 15 minutes. What time we got? 12:41. Yeah, and then I'm going to go take my walk. It's kind of cool today. So it's really fun to walk when it's like 65, 70 degrees, when it's sunny. And like I said in the past, I go to along the Hudson River. I don't know if you guys have ever been to New York. I know some people are from New York. I walk along the water. I absolutely love it. But today, since it's interesting, since I overate last night, it's so interesting how the body works. I find that I'm actually hungry right now, where I typically would not be. Like typically when I do these live streams, I'm not hungry because I'm in my normal fasting schedule. The fact that I overate last night and I ate a lot of carbohydrates, I'm sure I like kind of had a blood sugar crash. I just feel hungry this morning. So I might even like eat a protein bar before I take my walk. I'm probably going to have a Quest. I like the double chocolate protein bar before this walk, right after this live stream. So let's see what... How do you heal lower back pain? Oh, that's a big complex one. And I've struggled with lower back pain over the years of my life. Like I for example, I rode like dirt bikes as a kid. I did a ton of surfing in my life, and I've injured myself surfing so many times. I literally, every single disc in my lumbar, my lower back is bulged or herniated. And I got a couple in my neck too, and there's multiple different things that I've done. First of all, I know, Gene, we've talked about this thing. I think when it comes to like a biomechanical approach, like the right exercises to do and the right movements, I really love 𝘾𝙾𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂. Look him up, 𝘾𝙾𝙾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂. If you want, after this, I'll put a link to his website. He's known as the guy who invented like the big 3 exercises. One is like the bird dog, the other one is like a plank, and the other one is like this modified abdominal type curl. His whole philosophy is really interesting when it comes to back pain. I think he's one of the leading authorities in it. I would definitely look at his type of stuff. And then I also would look at like the new science just about pain in general. Like pain is a multi-sensory experience. Like sometimes you can literally like hurt your back and then still have pain months or years later, even though like there's no tissue damage, like to think that your back actually healed. Sometimes you have to prove to your central nervous system that there's nothing really wrong through mobility, movement, through just, the key is you want to keep moving. You want to do as much pain-free movement as possible, even when you're injured. But there's so many different approaches. And I'm also a believer in Dr. John Storno, like mind over back pain, that this is kind of a little bit of a kookier thing, but I think there's definitely something to it, that repressed emotions can can cause pain in all different parts of your body to distract you from what's really upsetting you. I know it can sound a little bit kooky. Let me take a sip 1 second. But I do think there's something to that too. Like if you've been suffering from chronic pain for years and it just doesn't make sense to you, I also would look into Dr. John Storno, or like just the new pain science besides just physical therapy and things like that. Let's see what we got. Sorry about that though. I know how you feel with back pain. Let's see, Gene. Okay. I keep hearing just how awesome avocados are. I explained, I think it's like a superfood. First of all, I'd like everyone to get at least 25, maybe even more grams of fiber every single day. I eat probably, without even trying, I'm probably at 35, maybe 40. First of all, avocados are so high in fiber. Typical avocado may have 17, 18 grams of fiber. Plus, they're loaded with potassium. A typical avocado could have 8, 900, a gram, 1,000 milligrams of potassium. Like the adequate intake of potassium for the day is like over 4,000 milligrams. Most people don't even come close. So incredible source of potassium, right? Great source of fiber. Also good in those healthy fats, high in those monounsaturated fats, which makes it so satisfying. So for example, if I ate that arugula salad and I didn't have a whole avocado in it, I don't think it would sustain my hunger. Plus, an avocado is such an easy, even though it's a fruit, it's a lower glycemic fruit, it's a higher fat fruit, high fiber fruit. It's so easy just to cut open an avocado. And I haven't been doing it lately because it's interesting. I was buying those fish eggs, those salmon roe fish eggs at Whole Foods. They changed brands. They got rid of the brand they like. But what I was doing is I was taking like a tablespoon of those salmon roe eggs, put it in the center of an avocado. It's so good. You get the saltiness from those eggs and the high omega-3s. And those healthy fats and fiber. I love it. I think an avocado is a superfood. And they're so easy, relatively affordable. Around here in New York, though, the prices vary dramatically. Like, unfortunately, like my local supermarket, which I love, it's like an Italian supermarket, like a family owns it. You can spend $3 for an avocado. Whole Foods are on sale all the time. You get it for $1.50. My wife gets them for me at like Stop and Shop, which is like a more of a normal, like middle America, middle class type supermarket. You can get them for like $1 an avocado. I don't think for $1 you can get a better, like, nutritious all rounded food than an avocado. I would check them out, Gene. I think you would absolutely love them. And you got to acquire a taste for them. When I was a kid, I didn't like it, but you can make guacamole with them. And a guacamole, it's literally just avocado. Even though it tastes like there's so much other things thrown in there, a little salt, pepper. Cut up some tomatoes, some onions, some garlic, and mix it up. Put a little Tabasco sauce in there. Just be careful that you're not going to eat the avocado with chips. Eat it with carrot sticks or something like that. Or celery stalks. Okay. Let's see what Carol Jean. Yes, I don't feel hungry unless I eat something. I shouldn't, right? I know my body so well now. Me too. I knew, like, maybe it's even psychological. I knew though last night when I was eating that food, said I'm gonna wake up today, I'm gonna be hungry for my live stream. I'm even having a little bit of extra coffee, and this time I don't know if you can see it. It's almost black, but even this morning I felt like putting just a teeny bit of cream in my coffee, and I did. I didn't put any sugar, but you can see I put a teeny bit of cream in there. Okay, let's see what Jeff's got. Okay, if I'm lifting dumbbells at home, is the order of exercise important? Like, is it better to do all sets of one thing, then switch to something else, or better to back and forth between body parts? Okay, that's actually a good question. First of all, the biggest thing to think about is like eliminating weak links. Okay, look at it like this. Like, for example, when you're doing a push-up, it's a compound movement, right? You're working your chest, your shoulders, and your triceps. Now, your triceps and your shoulders are like smaller and most likely weaker than you're doing your chest, right? So you first wouldn't want to do like a lot of tricep work and then go and try to do a chest workout, because it's the triceps are already the weak link. Same thing like if you're doing a pull-up. Say you're doing a chin-up, or let's say you're doing like a seated row, working your back, biceps, and like forearm strength. Like you wouldn't want to first burn out your forearms and make your forearms weak because they're already the weak link. Or you wouldn't want to do a whole bunch of curls before you start training your back because you won't be able to get your back, give your back a good work. So that's one thing to think about. When it comes to like how many sets, like for example, let's say you're training like your biceps and triceps. Should you do all your bicep work, or should you do like one set of biceps, one set of triceps? It's just a way of mixing it up. I like antagonistic type training a lot because it saves time in the gym and just keeps the heart rate up. I think Franco Columbu used to talk about this, like working out like in the breathless state where you're always kind of like breathing pretty good. And I like the idea of training antagonistically, meaning that when you're training your chest, like say you're doing a bench press or pushing, right? Without rest, go right to a pulling movement, like a rowing movement. Because they're antagonistic. It can save a lot of time. So you can go like chest back, and train like that. I'd like that a lot. Same thing with your arms. Like I said, you can go bicep, tricep, as opposed to just training your biceps, as opposed to just training your triceps, as opposed to just training your chest first and then training your back. I like that antagonistic training a lot. That's how I do train most of my clients because it's very time efficient. It keeps the heart rate up. I love it. But there's benefits to both, Jeff. It's really, I would just mix it up all the time. At 𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂, okay, I usually work out in a fasted state. What is your opinion, experience? I like fasted workouts. Okay, the research is a little bit mixed. Like if you're working out in a fasted state, you probably will burn a greater percentage of fat calories during the actual workout. And it makes sense, right? Just think you got no sugar running through your bloodstream, so your body's got to dip into stored energy. You're probably going to burn a greater percentage of fat. But then the respiratory exchange ratio, some research has shown, kind of flips later in the day. So that means like 6-7 hours later in the day, your body might start burning more carbohydrates. But I wouldn't even look at it like that. It depends on what your goal is working out. If your main goal is exercise performance and like doing the best you can in the gym or whatever exercise you're doing, I would probably say maybe a faster workout might not be best. It also has to do with like, are you fat adapted or not? Meaning that like if you've been eating like a low carb diet and you're more like a fat adapted athlete, I'm somewhat fat adapted, I would consider myself. Meaning that my body is so used to eating a relatively low carb diet for such an extended period of time that when I go to the gym, my body automatically is going to burn more fat than carbohydrates than someone else who's more of a carb athlete. Like my son runs like 80 miles a week. He's a collegiate college runner. He's a carb guy though. He's like burning carbs. He needs carbs. He can never do like a high performance fasted workout because he's not used to it. See, a lot of it also, 𝘾𝙃𝙃𝙃, is like if you're used to it, like I'm used to it. I do most of my exercises in a fasted state. Like for example, even though I just said I'm going to have my bar, because I'm just hungry today before my walk. But typically my rule is I do almost all my cardio in a fasted state. But I'm not concerned about exercise performance. Like meaning I don't care. I'm doing my cardio to make my heart stronger. Yes, to burn a little bit of body fat. And, I don't care if I don't go as hard. If I was competing, like say I want to start like entering a bike race and I want to win the race for my age bracket, then I would do things differently. Maybe I would take in some calories and some stuff, when I'm trying to get like maximum performance. But for me, I do all my cardio in a fasted state and all my easy workouts in a fasted state. When it comes to all of my resistance training, and I do most of my training, I don't work out hard, but every now and then, maybe 20-30% of the time, I work out pretty hard. I probably will take in calories, especially for resistance training, as like a pre-workout, like protein shake, maybe even with some carbohydrates in it too, because I can work out harder and I can get more out of the workout. Plus I can get a nice pump when I have some carbohydrates in me. And I've done some videos on my pre-workout shakes. Like I look to do two things. I definitely want protein, right? Those essential amino acids, all 9. I definitely want some carbohydrates to give me a little bit more energy. Even though I'm fat adapted, I have that metabolic flexibility of being able to take in carbs, and I just feel great when I do it, right? And then I also like to take something that's going to increase nitric oxide, that's increase blood flow. And I use 2 different mechanisms. I'll maybe take L-citrulline, which is a non-essential amino acid, It's also very high. Watermelon's really high in L-citrulline too. See, L-citrulline helps the body make arginine, which in turn helps the body make nitric oxide. So I definitely would put in maybe 3 to 6 grams of L-citrulline, and then I'll put in some type of like beet powder or something like that, something that's going to be high in nitrates to make the nitric oxide. So I know, I guess like somewhat of a long-winded response to your question. Like I do most of my workouts fasted, but I think it's totally fine. I know like Thomas DeLore, he's got over like what 2-3 million followers on YouTube. He talks about this stuff too. He's a big believer in fasted workouts. A lot of people, I think it's great. I think fasted cardio is a great thing to do. I hope you got something out of that, J-Girl. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Okay, Gwen, I have strong legs but weak arms. Should I lift heavier weights with my arms or do more reps with light weight? You know, it really has to do with like I did a video I really like called talking about how you can do just as well with light weights. It really has to do with intensity. If you're just doing light weights but you're still creating a response, meaning like those last few repetitions are somewhat difficult, it could be just as effective as lifting heavier weights. But a general thing I would say when it comes to women in general is I find that women are just concerned about lifting heavy weights. I think you should probably train a little bit heavier. Just go a little heavier, and then 30% of the time you want to, I don't know if you have to really train to failure, but you want to go like 90% effort with resistance training, maybe 30% of the time. I like to work in cycles. Maybe I'll do like an 8-week cycle where I start off easy, but the last 2-3 weeks of the cycle with resistance training, I'm going pretty hard. And I like that. And it could be, but any rep range can put on muscle, whether you're doing 20 reps, whether you're doing 3 reps. I think the thing is that when the weights get real heavy, the chance of getting hurt is increased. So I do like that rep range of like 15 to 20, where the last few reps are somewhat difficult, depending upon where you are within your cycle of intensity. But it all has to do with how hard you're working. They give you the simple answer. Okay, do you think some older women struggle with getting fat adapted? Yeah, Carol, I think everyone does, if that's what your goal is. Like, I would love for example, my son, and one of my favorite guys is 𝘾𝙊𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂, PhD. He's trained these world-class athletes. He's been talking about this fat adapted stuff for 20 years. I read some of his textbooks, and he's taken these world-class athletes, like these mid-distance, these marathoners people, and he's totally changed everything and made them more of a fat-adapted athlete. Like, I would love my son one day, maybe when he's done with college and he's just more of a recreational runner, I would love him to become more of a fat-adapted athlete. Actually, Mark Sesson, I talk about him too all the time. He wrote the book, The Primal Blueprint, but he wrote one book, which I think is my favorite book of his, called Primal Endurance, talking about how he was just, he was a world-class runner, but he was like breaking his body down, training too hard, eating a high-carb diet, and he switched everything over to become more of a fat-adapted base building type thing. So like a 𝘾𝙊𝘾𝑃 formula for getting like in top shape base building would be, for example, that switching over to more of a higher fat, lower carb, adequate amount of protein diet. But then when it comes to your training, he would want you to base build. And a typical formula would be like say you pick a distance. Say you're going to run for 45 minutes. He would want you to not go above your maximum aerobic zone, meaning the formula he would use, he would take 180 and he would minus your age. So for example, I'm 60. So he would want me to do my, say, 45-minute run or jog or whatever it might be, not letting my heart rate go one beat above 120 beats per minute. And then the goal would be is to keep on trying to cover more ground within that 45-minute run. Like keep on getting faster and faster and faster, but at the same time, not letting your heart rate go higher. So you're building an incredible aerobic base, and at the same time eating more of a higher fat, lower carb type diet. So you become an incredible aerobic machine. You become an incredible fat burner. And you may have noticed, I don't really follow it anymore, but I know some of those like double Ironman. Those contests where they go to Hawaii. They do everything is double. Like they run 2 marathons, right? It's like a 2 or 3 day event. Just incredible. There's been some people who win those events. Like they say their average heart rate was like 115 beats, 120 beats the whole race. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but that's the key. is to really become aerobic, become a fat burner. You know, like to really condition yourself to be incredibly efficient. And Mark Sesson talks about this stuff all the time. That was the whole gist of that Primal Endurance book of his, and all of Phil Maffetons. He's great. And I've seen him now and then like popping up, like 𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂, that's the other podcast I like a lot to drive. He's a longevity doctor. He interviewed Phil Maffetone. Great. I can put a link below this video to a great interview to listen to. All of his stuff he was way ahead, decades ahead of his time, I think, in how he conditioned athletes and just his whole thought process for being fat adapted. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Gwen, I've done a few dumbbell presses with 45 pounds. Wow, that's really good. But that's about my max, like 4 of those. I think that's great. I mean, that's a lot of weight, 45 pounds. I would be careful though with only 4 reps. I'd like to see you with a little bit more of a higher rep range, just because, I mean, 45 pounds, I don't know what your weight is, but that's a lot of weight, 45 pounds, you know. Gene, thanks, Mike. Gotta go, have a nice walk. Oh, thanks, Gina. Thanks for showing up again. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm probably going to hit the road too. Any other questions though before I go? I don't want to leave anything unanswered. I'll give you guys another minute. And thanks for G Girl for showing up, asking great questions. I think it's your first time. You may have been here last week. I'm not sure. All right, guys, I'm going to hit the road. Have a wonderful week. You know, text me any questions. I mean, just not text me. Like, leave comments below my videos with any questions. I'll let you know next Sunday how this whole like video conference went for me. Should be a lot of fun. Let's see. I think, did we hit one more? Okay, 150 pounds. Yes, 100. I think 45 pounds is a lot. I don't think you even have to go that heavy. Okay. All right, guys. Take care, and I really appreciate you showing up today. Take care. Bye bye.